October 18th, 2004, Charleston, South Carolina. The kind of crisp autumn morning where sunlight filters through the live oaks, casting shadows across the streets of a city that feels eternal, like it has seen every kind of story unfold. But on this day, something sinister slipped quietly into history, something that would haunt a family for years. Emily Carter, a 17-year-old high school senior with a bright smile and a laugh that could light up a room, vanished without a trace. Her mother, Diane Carter, remembers that morning as if frozen in time. Emily had kissed her goodbye at the kitchen table, her backpack slung over her shoulder, ready to walk to school. "I'll be home by 3, Mom," she said. The kind of ordinary words parents hear countless times. Diane never imagined they would be the last. By 4 toward p.m., panic had begun to seep in. Emily didn't return. Calls to friends, her teachers, and even her best friend's parents turned up nothing. That night, Diane sat by the phone, rocking back and forth, staring at the front porch as if willing her daughter to appear. Her husband, Michael Carter, a construction foreman known for his quiet determination, organized a small search party of neighbors, scouring nearby streets, alleyways, and abandoned lots. Every knock on doors, every shouted name, every flashlight beam cast into shadows felt like a desperate plea. And every hour that passed without a clue tightened a knot of fear in the family's chest. Local law enforcement launched an official search within hours, but despite their best efforts, the trail quickly grew cold. Witnesses offered conflicting stories. Some reported seeing a teenage girl matching Emily's description near the old waterfront. Others claimed she had gotten into a car with a stranger. None of it led anywhere concrete. Flyers plastered on telephone poles, messages on local radio stations, and an alert through the school system yielded tips that proved fruitless. Emily's disappearance became the kind of mystery that towns whisper about. The story that parents tell their children to remind them to be careful, but no one can fully explain. The Carters refused to let hope die. Michael, exhausted but unrelenting, created a small office in the garage, transforming it into a makeshift command center. Maps of the neighborhood, photographs of Emily, and notes detailing every lead cluttered the space. Friends volunteered to drive the streets, checking every vacant lot, every park, every abandoned pier along the Ashley River. Diane attended church daily, praying for a miracle while lighting candles at the altar in Emily's name. Sleep became optional. Days bled into nights with the same rhythm, searching, questioning, waiting, hoping. Years passed, but the case lingered in a shadow that never fully lifted. In 2009, police conducted a major review of the original evidence. Files were digitized, witness statements re-examined, and forensic experts consulted. Yet the technology available then wasn't enough. The fibers collected from Emily's backpack, the partial fingerprints in the family car, even the CCTV from a gas station near the riverfront, all were inconclusive. Every lead hit a dead end. The local community, once galvanized, slowly moved on, but the Carter family remained vigilant. Every time a missing persons case appeared in the news, Diane and Michael clung to it, studying it, hoping for insight, a new connection, any spark that might reignite the search for their daughter. By 2015, the story of Emily Carter had grown into a local legend of sorts, a cautionary tale for Charleston families. Still, Michael refused to let despair dictate their lives. He joined online forums dedicated to cold case investigations, exchanging notes with volunteers and retired detectives, learning the minutiae of forensic science, retracing Emily's final known steps with the precision of a seasoned investigator. Diane, meanwhile, became a quiet pillar of support for other families experiencing similar nightmares, offering empathy and encouragement while maintaining a fragile hope that one day Emily would be found. Then, in 2023, nearly 2 decades after that October morning, new forensic technology finally cracked the case open. A single piece of hidden evidence, a partial, DNA sample from a discarded glove found near the Riverwalk in 2004 was reanalyzed using advanced techniques unavailable at the time of Emily's disappearance. The DNA matched a man who had long lived in Charleston, a person who had been questioned once in 2005, but never considered a serious suspect. This revelation ignited a flurry of activity within the Charleston Police Department and the state's cold case unit. Investigators revisited old interviews, rechecked alibis, and followed a trail that had been invisible for nearly 20 years. Detective Laura Bennett, assigned to the case, recalled the moment the match came back. It was like watching a story that had been paused for years suddenly continue. Everything changed in an instant. For the Carter family, for the community, for the investigation, nothing would ever be the same. Neighbors were stunned when the arrest was announced in late 2023. Mark Reynolds, the man identified by DNA evidence, had been living quietly in the same city, his life outwardly unremarkable. A local business owner, known for being polite and friendly, he had raised 2 children of his own, taught Sunday school, and volunteered for neighborhood cleanups. To the outside world, he was a model citizen. But behind closed doors, the truth was darker than anyone could have imagined. Emily's mother, Diane, described the moment she learned of the arrest. "I didn't know whether to cry or to scream. After 19 years, we finally had an answer, but it brought back every single day of fear, every sleepless night. Nothing can replace the years we lost, but knowing who did this, that finally gave us a sliver of peace." The arrest immediately drew media attention across South Carolina. Local news outlets covered the story extensively, highlighting the incredible persistence of the Carter family and the tireless work of detectives who refused to let time erase justice. Social media erupted with messages of support, disbelief, and admiration for the decades-long investigation that finally bore fruit. Court proceedings began in early 2024. Despite the overwhelming evidence, including the DNA match, forensic findings from the crime scene, and corroborating witness statements, Reynolds maintained a stoic silence, refusing to comment on the charges. The trial, held in Charleston's historic courthouse, was tense. The courtroom was packed with reporters, local residents, and the Carter family. Evelyn Carter, now in her 70s, and Michael, who had aged visibly over nearly 20 years of relentless searching, attended every day, determined to witness justice firsthand. The prosecution presented a meticulous case. Forensic experts explained how modern DNA testing had identified Reynolds as the source of the sample collected in 2004. Former friends and co-workers testified about suspicious behavior, revealing patterns that had gone unnoticed for years. Investigators outlined how Reynolds had manipulated those around him, blending seamlessly into the community while hiding his violent actions. The defense, facing overwhelming evidence, focused on Reynolds' health and age, attempting to argue that prison would be excessively harsh. But the jury, aware of the gravity of the crime and the years of suffering endured by the Carter family, returned a guilty verdict on all counts of kidnapping and first-degree murder. The judge's sentencing in mid-2024 was solemn. Reynolds received life in prison without the possibility of parole, the court emphasizing that the nearly 2 decades of delay did not diminish the severity of his crimes. The Carter family left the courthouse that day exhausted, emotionally drained, but carrying a sense of relief that they had finally found justice for Emily. For the Carters, life slowly resumed a fragile normalcy. Emily's bedroom, untouched for 19 years, was transformed into a small memorial. Her belongings were carefully preserved and displayed, a tangible reminder of her life and the resilience of a family who never gave up hope. Diane began mentoring other parents dealing with missing children, her story serving as a testament to persistence, patience, and the power of modern forensic science. The South Carolina 2004 cold case became a benchmark for how technology and human determination can finally bring answers to Families who have waited decades. Police departments across the state reviewed older cases inspired by the breakthrough in Charleston. In the end, Emily Carter's story proved that even after 19 years of darkness, the truth can be found, justice can be served, and families can finally breathe. After the trial and conviction of Mark Reynolds in mid-2024, Charleston slowly began to reckon with the decades-long mystery that had gripped the city. For the Carter family, though, the courtroom drama was only the beginning of a new chapter, one in which the pain of the past mingled with a long-awaited sense of closure. Michael Carter, who had spent nearly 20 years tirelessly searching every inch of the city, every creek bed, every abandoned lot, found himself reflecting on the toll the case had taken. His hair, now almost completely gray, was a testament to countless sleepless nights. The hands that once held a flashlight over riverbanks and through alleyways now trembled slightly as he tended to his garden, an attempt to reclaim some normalcy. Diane, on the other hand, found herself walking through the house differently. Rooms that had remained frozen in time, untouched since Emily's disappearance, now held memories of her daughter's presence. The notes on her desk, her soccer trophies, the posters of her favorite bands, each object a bittersweet reminder of the life she had been forced to lose. Community support remained a constant. Volunteers who had helped search for Emily all those years ago returned to Charleston in the wake of Reynolds' arrest to offer their sympathy and relief. Candlelight vigils were held, now to honor both the memory of Emily and the resilience of the family who never gave up. Local news outlets ran retrospectives, chronicling the original investigation in 2004, the tireless work of law enforcement through the years, and the breakthroughs that modern technology had finally unlocked. The story captured national attention as well. Programs dedicated to cold cases across the United States highlighted the Charleston case as a model for persistence, forensic innovation, and the critical importance of keeping evidence properly stored for decades. One of the most crucial aspects of the breakthrough had been the painstaking preservation of evidence. The glove that had contained the DNA sample from 2004 had survived nearly 2 decades in a small evidence locker in Charleston Police Department headquarters. Detective Laura Bennett, who oversaw the DNA reanalysis, recalled, "We always hoped the evidence would one day tell its story. But even as technology advanced, the tiniest mistake in storage could have rendered it useless." In Emily's case, every precaution taken paid off, and it finally gave her family answers. The investigation that led to Reynolds' arrest also unearthed previously overlooked connections. Forensic teams re-examined the scene, where Emily had last been seen, a quiet street near the Ashley River, and discovered microscopic traces of soil on her discarded backpack that matched a patch of land behind Reynolds' former property. Digital mapping and geolocation software, unavailable in 2004, enabled investigators to trace her steps and reconstruct the timeline of her disappearance with remarkable precision. Witnesses from 2004, who had originally reported seeing a man following Emily that afternoon, were re-interviewed in 2023, providing corroboration that strengthened the case against Reynolds. For Michael and Diane Carter, the arrest brought a flood of emotions they had long buried. Relief, anger, grief, and closure all collided in a way that was both overwhelming and cathartic. Michael recalled sitting quietly in his garage office one evening after the arrest, surrounded by stacks of old files and maps. He had spent years meticulously cataloging every lead, every rumor, every dead end. The room, which had once been a symbol of frustration and despair, now felt like a testament to endurance and hope. Diane, meanwhile, spent hours sifting through Emily's belongings, sorting her daughter's clothes and personal items for donation to a local youth center. "It felt like saying goodbye in the only way we could," Diane explained. "We couldn't bring Emily back, but we could honor her life." The Charleston Police Department recognized the significance of the case, not just for the Carter family, but for the broader community. Training seminars were held for local law enforcement officers, focusing on cold case management, forensic evidence preservation, and the integration of new DNA technologies. The Charleston case was cited repeatedly as an example of how combining meticulous record-keeping with scientific advancement could solve crimes long considered unsolvable. In the months following Reynolds' arrest, the Carters began receiving letters and messages from other families who had been waiting decades for answers. Parents shared stories of missing children, teenagers recounted unresolved disappearances, and community members expressed gratitude for the Carter family's perseverance. Emily's story became more than a local tragedy. It became a symbol of hope for families everywhere, proving that even after nearly 20 years, justice could be achieved. Life for Michael and Diane slowly adjusted to a new normal. Michael returned to his work in construction, though he often found himself pausing to think about the past, replaying the search efforts, and imagining different outcomes. Diane devoted her time to counseling families, working with local support groups, and speaking at events about the emotional toll of long-term uncertainty. Emily's younger brother, Jason, who had been only 12 when she disappeared, had grown into adulthood carrying the weight of his sister's absence. After Reynolds' conviction, he began volunteering with organizations that assisted families of missing persons, channeling years of unresolved grief into advocacy and action. The community of Charleston also began to heal. Annual remembrance events for Emily were established, including a scholarship in her name for high school students pursuing careers in law enforcement, forensic science, or social work. Local schools incorporated lessons on community safety and missing persons awareness, using Emily's story as a case study. Public safety campaigns reminded residents to remain vigilant, report suspicious activity, and recognize that even the most ordinary neighbor might conceal extraordinary secrets. Forensic advancements, inspired by the Carter case, prompted renewed reviews of other long-standing cold cases across South Carolina. Several previously unresolved disappearances were reopened, evidence re-examined, and new leads pursued. The success of the Emily Carter case illustrated a broader lesson. The passage of time does not erase the potential for justice, and persistent effort can ultimately turn decades of despair into resolution. As of 2025, Emily Carter's story remains a touchstone for both the Charleston community and the wider cold case investigation field. Michael and Diane Carter continue to honor her memory daily, their lives forever shaped by the extraordinary journey from loss to justice. The case serves as a reminder that even in the darkest, longest nights the truth can be found, and a family's resilience can triumph over despair. The arrest and conviction of Mark Reynolds proved that time does not protect criminals from accountability. It also showed that love, persistence, and modern science, when combined, can solve cases once thought impossible. For the Carter family, the past was painful, the present cautiously hopeful, and the future defined by the memory of Emily, a daughter lost, a daughter remembered, and finally, a daughter whose story had been told to its fullest. The months following Mark Reynolds' arrest were some of the most intense in Charleston's recent history. For law enforcement, the pressure to build an airtight case was immense given the sheer passage of time. Detectives spent long hours combing through every document, revisiting old witness statements, and carefully analyzing new forensic evidence. Each lead, no matter how small, was treated as critical. Detective Laura Bennett, who had been assigned to the case since 2022, explained, "We were acutely aware that this wasn't just a cold case. This was a family's life story interrupted. We couldn't afford any mistakes. Every detail mattered, and every detail could make the difference between justice and failure." The re-examination of Emily Carter's disappearance highlighted just how much investigative techniques had changed since 2004. Back then, officers had limited resources, no advanced DNA profiling, no digital mapping, and only basic crime scene analysis tools. Key physical evidence had been catalogued, but not fully exploited. In 2023, the department leveraged modern forensic labs, cutting-edge software, and nationwide criminal databases to create a new investigative roadmap. Microtrace analysis revealed fibers, paint residues, and soil compositions previously undetectable. Each piece of evidence was a thread leading back to Reynolds, weaving together a narrative that no jury could ignore. Community members, some of whom had lost hope decades earlier, were deeply involved throughout this phase. Local volunteer groups coordinated searches for overlooked areas, reviewed historical photographs, and offered contextual insights about neighborhoods in 2004. Their involvement proved invaluable. Old witnesses who had long assumed they were irrelevant were encouraged to come forward. One neighbor recalled seeing a suspicious vehicle near the Carter home late in the afternoon of Emily's disappearance, a detail dismissed in 2004 but critical in 2023. As forensic geolocation matched tire tread patterns to Reynolds's car, the emotional toll on the Carter family remained profound. Diane found herself revisiting old memories daily, confronting the helplessness she had felt as a mother in 2004. Michael spent evenings poring over the original case files, tracing timelines and mentally reconstructing Emily's final hours. They leaned heavily on one another, finding solace in shared grief and determination. For 20 years we held on to hope, even when the world seemed to have forgotten, Diane explained. Now it's like that hope finally has a shape, a name and a truth. In early 2024, as the trial approached, law enforcement organized rehearsals and mock examinations for witnesses. Each testimony had to withstand intense scrutiny, given the decades that had passed. Forensic experts meticulously prepared to explain complex DNA findings in simple, accessible terms. The goal was not only to secure a conviction, but also to ensure the family and community could fully comprehend the science that had finally brought answers. The courtroom itself became a venue for both confrontation and healing. When Reynolds was brought before the judge in March 2024, he appeared significantly older than the man implicated in 2004. His composure, however, remained unnervingly calm. The Carter family attended each day, sitting close together for support. They didn't speak, but their presence alone was a powerful reminder that Emily's memory had endured, unbroken by decades of waiting. The prosecution began by walking the jury through the sequence of events in October 2004. Old photographs of Emily, her school projects and the neighborhood were displayed, humanizing the story beyond just a criminal case. Witnesses recounted memories, some shaky from age but vivid in emotion, about Emily's last known movements. Detectives testified about the painstaking analysis of physical evidence, from the soil and fibers to tire tread patterns and microscopic DNA traces, explaining how each element tied Reynolds to the crime. Reynolds' defense focused largely on his age and health, as well as the elapsed time since the crime. They argued that memories had faded, and that contemporary evidence might be contaminated over the years. However, the overwhelming forensic evidence and corroborated witness statements left little room for doubt. The jury, after hours of deliberation, returned with a unanimous guilty verdict in June 2024. For the Carter family, the verdict was a complicated blend of relief and sorrow. Justice had been served, but the 20 years of uncertainty could not be erased. Michael reflected, "We finally know the truth. But it's a truth that has been decades in coming. Emily will never be here to see the world she deserved. That loss remains." Diane found some comfort in the knowledge that the system had ultimately delivered accountability. She began speaking at support groups for families of missing children, sharing the story of resilience, patience, and the importance of never giving up no matter how long it takes. The impact of the case extended far beyond the courtroom. Local law enforcement agencies across South Carolina reviewed other cold cases in light of the technological breakthroughs that had solved Emily's disappearance. DNA reanalysis, digital mapping, and cross-state database comparisons became standard procedure. Emily's case became part of training seminars for officers, teaching that even decades-old crimes could be resolved with modern science and unwavering dedication. The Charleston community, too, responded with gestures of remembrance and acknowledgement. Residents organized a permanent memorial in Emily's honor, including a scholarship fund for students pursuing criminal justice and forensic science careers. Local schools incorporated her story into safety awareness programs, emphasizing community vigilance and the critical role citizens can play in solving crimes. In private moments, the Carter family continued to navigate their grief. Michael found small ways to honor Emily's memory, from visiting her favorite park to maintaining her old room as a quiet reflection space. Diane donated Emily's childhood artwork and journals to a local youth center, allowing her daughter's creativity to inspire others. Jason, now in his early 30s, became actively involved in outreach efforts for families with missing children, turning personal loss into meaningful advocacy. By late 2024 and into 2025, the case had solidified its place as a landmark in Charleston's law enforcement history. The combination of persistent investigation, technological advancement, and community involvement demonstrated the power of collaborative efforts in cold case resolution. For many, Emily Carter's story symbolized hope, that even after 2 decades of uncertainty, truth could prevail and justice could be served. The arrest and conviction of Mark Reynolds emphasized an important societal lesson. Crimes can leave scars that last a lifetime, but perseverance, modern science, and compassion can provide closure, if not complete healing. For Charleston, the Carter family, and countless others following the story, the message was clear. Never underestimate the impact of determined individuals, and never dismiss the possibility that a cold case can still find its resolution, even 20 years later. As the Carters continued their lives into 2025, Emily's presence remained palpable in their daily routines and in the broader Charleston community. Her story, now complete in the legal sense, remained a touchstone for education, advocacy, and remembrance. Each candle lit at community vigils, each scholarship awarded, and each lesson taught about community safety reinforced the enduring truth. Emily Carter would never be forgotten, and her journey from disappearance to justice would continue to inspire generations. Even after Mark Reynolds' conviction in 2024, the ripples of Emily Carter's case continued to affect Charleston in profound ways. The courtroom victory brought legal closure, but emotional and community recovery would take years. Diane Carter often described the weeks after the verdict as quiet, unsettling calm. The intense focus that had driven her life for 2 decades suddenly dissipated, leaving a space filled with grief, reflection, and the enormity of lost time. Michael Carter, who had spent so many nights scanning old maps and timelines, now wrestled with the reality that his sister's life, her experiences, and her future were permanently gone. Community healing became an unofficial project led by volunteers, former investigators, and educators. The Charleston Police Department, acknowledging both past investigative shortcomings and the value of modern science, organized workshops and public sessions to educate residents about crime prevention, recognizing suspicious behavior, and supporting families affected by long-term unsolved cases. These programs emphasize the critical role citizens could play in aiding law enforcement, highlighting that even decades-old tips could be the turning point in solving a case. One striking